The Shadow of the Gods is a 2021 fantasy novel published by English author and real-life armor and castle enthusiast John Gwynn. Set in the fictional Norse country of Vigrid, the story follows three main protagonists through their own winding narratives of loss, revenge, and independence. The book is currently sitting at 4.2 stars out of 5 on Goodreads, and that is accumulated from over 33,000 reviews. The author, John Gwynn, has successfully published up to 9 books at this point, and his debut novel called Malice was published back in 2012. Since then, he's published 2 completed series, and this is part of the 3rd series called the Bloodsworn Trilogy, and it is The Shadow of the Gods with its 2nd book titled The Hunger of the Gods. The 3rd book is currently untitled, at least as far as the public knows, but it is suspected to be released in the next few years. John Gwynn has stated in an interview with his 2 sons that there were 2 significant influences on this book, and they were the English epic of Beowulf and Norse mythology, such as that of Ragnarok. The world of Vigrid is bleak and harsh, and the kidnapping and murder, slavery, violence, and revenge are elements that are present within even just the very first few chapters. This world is populated by the bones of these long-dead gods that scatter the countryside, and legends hint that one of the gods, Rifa the dragon, may still be alive beneath a sacred tree in the distant north. Some people believe that the blood of the dead gods may run through the veins of a small portion of the population called Tainted, and these are people who exhibit strange abilities like supernatural strength, supernatural speed, and uncanny hunting and tracking abilities. Each of the 3 protagonists of this particular book aggressively seek their own ends. One is seeking revenge, one is seeking rescue, and the other is seeking independence. And all the while, there is a background of political strife and growing cult influences that threaten to overtake the world with relics from the dead gods. The lore of Shadow of the Gods is far from original, but John Gwynn's fast-paced writing prevents the reader from reading and spending too much time making comparisons to other fantasy works. Some of the Norse influences in this book are pretty obvious. One is the magical Bifrost, which is the legendary bridge that connects Earth, the Earth realm of Midgard, to the celestial world of Asgard. In Norse mythology, it's often depicted as a rainbow bridge. There is a similar occurrence within this story. And there are also 2 giant ravens that are present in this story, which is a reference that is less obvious, but according to Norse myth, there are these 2 ravens named Hugin and Munin, whose names mean thought and memory, that are depicted as bringing news from Midgard to the god Odin. And so if you look at his image throughout history, Odin is often depicted flanked by these 2 ravens. Other mythological beings in the story include sacred tree spirits, Valkyrie warriors, trolls, water serpents, dragon-type creatures called Vaesen, and other Norse-inspired magical elements like blood magic, standing stones, sacred groves, enchantments, and nature sorcerers. The 3 stories are interesting enough to stand alone, and John graciously repeats unique in-world terms in context to help the reader follow these ideas without holding their hand. Readers will probably identify with 1 or 2 of the narratives more than the others, and if you are looking for direct and explicit magic, you will see that it is present, but it is rarely used as a ghost in the machine mechanic to magically solve the problems of the characters. So this is a trope that is very common in fantasy, and it often draws critique. And it's the idea that characters in fantasy can often just have their problems magically solved by ghost in the machine magic that is just there as part of the story, and it doesn't make sense in world. Fortunately, that's not the case in this story. There are various side characters that feature in each story. None of them feel terribly original or even memorable, but on the other hand, none of them are terribly unlikable either. One modern trend that may distract some readers is the very heavy-handed presence of physically strong female characters. John has stated in so many words that although his primary goal of writing is to entertain his readers, he believes he has a social responsibility to present certain modern sensibilities, and some people may be distracted by that. For example, there are just as many female jarls and clan leaders and warriors in this world as there are men, and the reasons why this is the case, I believe, could have been better fleshed out. If that's the nature of this world, that's great, but tell us why that's the case. But nevertheless, there are plenty of traditional macho, masculine male warriors to go around, and Gwynn doesn't denigrate male characters in order to elevate the female ones, which is a trope that current audiences have really begun to sniff out and actively reject in media. In conclusion, The Shadow of the Gods is fresh enough to hook readers into the narrative and fast enough to prevent them from becoming tired of familiar fantasy tropes. The fantasy genre can become reliant on certain tropes and settings, but John Gwynn tells a story that feels classic yet somehow new. For this reason, I give The Shadow of the Gods 5 out of 5 stars.